Big news has surfaced for the Las Vegas Raiders, and that is just due to the fact that with Pete Carroll and with John Spytek, they made their first move when it comes to addressing this coaching staff. At the time being, we had a lot of vacancies, but the Raiders have decided to bring back defensive coordinator Patrick Graham for his fourth season as the defensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. So this was definitely an interesting move because with the Raiders having a new regime come in, with Pete Carroll coming in, we weren't 100% sure what the future was going to look like from a coaching standpoint. And I thought as soon as we got rid of Antonio Pierce and we got rid of Tom Telesco, there was a good chance that we were going to have a whole new regime, a whole new coaching staff, but it looks like that will not be the case. The Raiders will bring back Patrick Graham. And overall, I feel like with Patrick Graham, he's a decent defensive coordinator. I don't think he's anything special or anything like that. But at this point, the one thing you gotta give Patrick Graham some credit for is at the very least, he has brought some stability to the defense. The Raiders for years were one of the worst defensive units, and it just felt like, every couple seasons we got a new defensive coordinator. At the very least, Patrick Graham has came in here and turned us from being one of those terrible defenses into a respectable unit. Overall, the secondary has been pretty good under Patrick Graham. And you look at it, from a number standpoint, his first season, the defense wasn't very good. In 2023, they definitely took a huge step forward, especially towards the end of the season where for like 9 or 10 weeks, I believe it was, they were ranked number 1 when it comes to points allowed. And this season, the defense definitely took a step backwards. This was not the defensive unit I was hoping and expecting for. A lot of us had high hopes that this defense could be a top 5, potentially a top 10 unit. And that just did not come to fruition. But at the same time, you do have to mention that there was just so many injuries on the defensive side of the football. You got Christian Wilkins going down. You got Malcolm Koonce going down before the season even started. 2 key pieces that were gone. Max Crosby was dealing with an injury early on. Marcus Epps going down. Jacorian Bennett went down. Just so many injuries, so that definitely played a factor into this. And personally, I was okay with the Raiders potentially moving on from a defensive coordinator standpoint, as long as we were able to upgrade. Robert Saleh's name was floating around there, so I would have been okay with something like that. But obviously with him going to the San Francisco 49ers and Patrick Graham too, he got an interview for that head coaching position with Jacksonville, but to me, it was a long shot for him to ever get a coaching gig as the head coach, at least. Coming off of a down season statistically. But overall, Patrick Graham, like I said, he's turned this defense into a respectable unit the last 2 seasons. And overall, from a continuity standpoint, this should help the Raiders defense out. We've got a lot of players that are due for a contract. Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Merrick, Robert Spillane. But with Patrick Graham coming back into the building, we should see a lot of these players getting re-signed. And that definitely is important as well, because if you want to compete as soon as possible, if you bring in a whole new defensive coordinator and bring in a whole new scheme, well, typically that's going to take some time to adapt. But overall, with Patrick Graham coming back, I think it's a solid move. And at this point, there weren't any real clear-cut upgrades at the time being, so I'm okay with bringing him back for another season. Continue to build that continuity and consistency on the defensive side of the football, alongside of, Pete Carroll, who's a defensive-minded head coach. He should be able to help continue to build this defense. And that's going to be huge, especially with the Raiders being in the AFC West and just the AFC in general with so much talent at the quarterback position from other teams. If you're going to want to compete against Mahomes, you can't do it with a shitty defense. You cannot go toe-to-toe with him when it comes to just trying to score on the offensive side of the football. You're going to have to make his life uncomfortable, and you're going to have to be able to limit that Kansas City Chiefs offense. But overall, the Raiders make their first move when it comes to assembling this coaching staff. Now the biggest thing we're going to have to wait for is the offensive coordinator position, because that is definitely a huge position that we're going to have to fill. And it's something we're going to need because we just have a lot of question marks on that side of the football. We got to get a quarterback in here. We got some young players, and we just haven't had a good offensive play caller for years now. So that's going to be a huge decision for Pete Carroll to make. But another thing that I wanted to touch on today was that the Senior Bowl has officially begun. The practices have already begun, and there's been several standout players that have been gaining some traction. And one of them is Dillon Gabriel, quarterback from the Oregon Ducks. And today he was just noted for his overall accuracy and his arm strength looking better than what most people would expect with him being a smaller quarterback, measured at 5'10", 202 pounds. And the biggest thing that they noticed was his velocity when it comes to throwing the football. He reportedly clocked in a throw that reached 74.9 miles per hour. And this reportedly is record-breaking, surpassing the NFL Combine's record, which was previously held by Josh Allen and Joe Milton at 62 miles per hour. So, he's got some zip to the football. And overall, he did have some good moments where he connected well with some wide receivers, especially one big play to Jalen Noel on a sideline grab, and his performance was described as unreal by some scouts, and some even going as far to compare him as a more athletic Tua Tagovailoa type of quarterback. Now, when you're talking about Dillon Gabriel, he's an interesting guy, undersized at the position, but he has a lot of college experience. He has thrown for over 30 touchdown passes and over 3,000 passing yards at 3 different universities. No other quarterback has done that, and he's just been super productive every stop in college football. He's coming off a pretty good season statistically with the Oregon Ducks, 72.9% completion, 3,800 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, quarterback rating of 164.9, 149 rushing yards, and 7 rushing touchdowns this season. But the interesting thing about Dillon Gabriel is just the fact that he should be a quarterback that will be attainable for the Raiders. I personally see him, anywhere between a 3rd round pick. Maybe could go as high as the 2nd round, but I personally don't think he's going to be in the 1st round, just given the physical limitations when it comes to his stature. I don't think a lot of NFL teams are going to be willing to risk selecting a quarterback in the 1st round that is 5'10". You typically look at league history, and not a lot of quarterbacks that small have had success, at least major success, in the National Football League. Obviously, there's like the Kyler Murrays of the world. But it's interesting because he should be attainable. And if the Raiders don't go with a high-end quarterback, with a drafted 1st-round quarterback, could he be a serious option for the Raiders in the later rounds? Another thing to take into consideration, too, is Pete Carroll. When he joined the Seattle Seahawks in 2012 in the 3rd round, they selected a smaller quarterback as well in Russell Wilson, and obviously that paid dividends for them. Now, I don't necessarily want to compare those two, saying that Dillon Gabriel and Russell Wilson have similar play styles or that he's going to be the next Russell Wilson, but you can see some similarities there. Undersized quarterbacks, both have a strong arm and can make throws down the field. But when it comes to Dillon Gabriel, there's definitely other quarterbacks I would prefer, but when you're talking about the 3rd round, if he's available, that could be an option that the Raiders seriously consider. And we'll just see how his draft stock continues to rise throughout this offseason. But another potential quarterback that the Raiders could draft is Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart did speak today at the Senior Bowl when he was asked by Vinny B about his thoughts and potentially reuniting with his former high school teammate, Jackson Powers Johnson. Take a listen.
The Review Journal and Jackson Powers Johnson, young lineman, campaigning for you a little bit. What were your thoughts about maybe reuniting with Jackson in
I would love that. That's my boy. Obviously people know us as his high school teammates, and he was my center, and he's such a hell of a talent. Every year I was trying to get him out of Oregon and have him come play with me, but it'd be amazing. And with it also being close to home, it would be a great opportunity.
Have you talked to the Raiders yet?
I'm going to keep that between my meetings. I appreciate it.
So when it comes to Jackson Dart, you love to hear that. He would love to rejoin JPJ. And also, I thought it was interesting that Vinny also asked him if he has met with the Raiders, and he refused to disclose that. But I think Jackson Dart's another super interesting quarterback option for the Raiders in this offseason. But I think Jackson Dart is going to be a guy that's going to go higher than Dillon Gabriel. Now, as it stands, a lot of people have Jackson Dart anywhere from the 4th to the 2nd round. Me personally, I do not think he's going to make it past the 1st round. I think he will get drafted in the 1st round. Now, if he could be there at the 2nd round, that would be an ideal scenario. But I just feel like this is a guy whose draft stock is going to continue to rise. You just look at him. He has the physical traits you're looking for in a quarterback. He is 6'2", 225 pounds. He has a strong arm. He's athletic. He can make big-time throws. He can push the ball down the field. He ranked 1st in most categories when it comes to 20-plus yard throws down the field with Ole Miss. So not only does he have all the physical traits you're ideally looking for a franchise quarterback, but he also has some intangible traits that you love to see in a potential franchise quarterback. He's a guy that's highly competitive. He has high energy. He's got that swagger and moxie to him, you know, that chip on your shoulder. And ideally for your quarterback, you want a guy like that can lead the troops and that can just exert confidence into your offense. So for all those reasons, I think Jackson Dart is a super interesting prospect, and I would love if the Raiders took a chance on him. But like I said, I think ultimately when it's all said and done, he will be a first-round pick. Now, whether or not you select him at 6 or do you trade up in the later half of the first round, not exactly sure how that will pan out. But ultimately, when it comes to this year in the NFL draft, I think Shedeur and Cam Ward are both locks to be first-round quarterbacks. And I think there's going to be one more first-round quarterback, and I think that's either going to be Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe. It's just going to depend how their draft stocks continue to rise post-combine and as we get closer to the NFL draft. But Raider Nation, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of Patrick Graham coming back to the silver and black? And what do you think about the possibility of Dillon Gabriel or Jackson Dart being drafted by the Raiders? Let me know in that comment section down below. But with that being said, Raider Nation, that's all for you guys in today's video. Anybody that's new to the channel, you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. That being said, I will see you guys in the next one.